So Charlotte for the imposition. I believe I got the
Welcome back at Yellowhammer Radio, Superstation 101 WYDE, live from the callks.com Heating and Air studio. Andrea, we just talked to Senator Luther Strange.
I know. Gave him an opportunity to clear the air. I want to commend him on at least coming right around from the moment Kay Ivey made the announcement yesterday. He's been, getting out there, communicating, and trying to get ahead of this perception, if you will, that's already emerged. I mean, hey, look, the governor even referred to a cloud of doubt when she announced that. And those are her words, and she's at least recognizing it and using it as a reason for this new special election.
And for those of you with a cloud of doubt over your mind, go back and listen to the interview we did with Luther Strange. That will be up on yellowhammernews.com later today. Listen to that interview. If Luther Strange had cut some type of deal, and I do believe the question I asked him was, hey, I just want to be Joe Alabama for a moment and ask you, did you cut a deal with the governor of Alabama for that Senate seat? And his answer was clearly no.
I'm glad you asked that question, by the way. Kudos.
Well, you're welcome. The people want to know.
Right.
Was he telling the truth? I personally believe, I believe the guy's telling the truth. You can look at his record. I've said this since day one. You can look at Luther Strange's record. The record speaks for itself. You can come up with a lot of things about Luther Strange if you're on the left to say about him. That's fine. I'll give you that. I know you can, because that's what you do when you're on the other side. If you're on the right or on the left, you look at the guy's record and see the people he's went after over the years. His record does speak for itself. Now, is there still a cloud of doubt there because of association with Bentley? Of course. That's the way the people of Alabama are going to vote. He was associated with Robert Bentley. But let's keep in mind, as the senator mentioned, he was going after Robert Bentley as well.
And he's caused or created numerous enemies in Montgomery, according to him, with what he's done. Yes, and he was investigating the whole situation. I think in this case, he also brought out a point that timing is everything in a lot of ways. I realize perception is also everything in a lot of ways for the voter. But the timing of this whole thing with him in presenting that letter and putting a hold on the one track of investigation was before the election, with the reasoning being, look, there's no way we could have known that this whole thing was going to play out the way it did. If we did this beforehand, it was because of we were addressing the issue at hand, not trying to project out, thinking we were going to win and there'd be an open Senate seat and we could play this game and all that.
Right. Our job is not to think for you at all. Our job is to make you think. Our job is to ask the questions you want to know. And I feel like we did our due diligence today. You had an amazing question to the senator. I think your question to Luther Strange was phenomenal. I feel like we asked the questions that needed to be asked today, cleared the air, let him address those. I feel like we were fair to him. I don't think we threw a softball question to him at all. Not one of them, other than, are you getting plenty of sleep? Because you're going to, if you run and win this time, you got to turn right around and run again. That was the only softball of the whole interview.
And that was a nice follow-up. You got to, smooth things over after you crack the bat,
When you make someone take a deep breath for a moment, you got to, clear the air for just a moment. Now, at the end of that, we did ask him about Representative Ed Henry. His name is being thrown out there and mentioned, and
I think he's thrown his hat into the ring, if you will.
And he did have some words about Ed Henry, and we're going to have that audio and play that in a moment. We will be talking to Representative Ed Henry here in just a moment on Yellowhammer Radio, and we're going to let Ed Henry address what Senator Strange did say there at the very end, because that's the only fair thing to do. Speaking of Representative Ed Henry, guess who's joining us right now on the Yellowhammer Hotline? Ed Henry, welcome into Yellowhammer Radio. How are you, sir?
Doing very well. How are you?
Living the dream, brother. Just living the dream.
Living the dream. Hey, sometimes that dream can be a nightmare, though.
That's in Montgomery politics, Ed.
That's in Montgomery politics.
And that's if you even bother to get some sleep, which we doubt that you're getting much of, considering all that happened yesterday.
I'm telling you, it's been a wild week.
Yeah, yes, indeed. That's a good word.
Representative Henry, the last time we spoke, we were discussing the goings-on down there in the Capitol and everything with Robert Bentley. Well, it's came and went, and he's gone now. It's like we can all breathe a breath of fresh air for a moment or so.
Amen.
And when we talked last, I do believe you told us that you were not planning on seeking office again. Is that right?
Had no intention. Actually, was running away from it as fast as we possibly could. My wife and I are completely tired of the corruption that exists inside government, the nastiness, the ugliness of politics, and we're looking forward to walking away, riding off into the sunset. And I'll have to admit, God has other plans for us, and as much as we resisted, He kept laying it out in front of us, and to the point where my wife and I were talking yesterday, and she finally said, how do you feel about it? And I said, I feel like God's laying this out at our feet, and in 20 years we will look back and say, wow, we missed an opportunity that God provided. And she said, then I guess we need to do it. And so here we are.
So you're now officially going to run for Senate, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right.
There it is.
And you have your wife on board. That is a good first step. I have to commend you on that.
Oh, look. I would not do it without her and my girls. No way. Not worth it. There's nothing in politics that makes my life easier or their lives easier.
Sure.
And none of this fulfills us.
Mm-hmm.
We are fulfilled, and this is just a service we are doing.
Well, what is it? I know this. You say that you've prayed about it and you've thought about it, but what can you deliver to the people of Alabama in that U.S. Senate seat?
Honesty, integrity, real life experiences. I've lived a very fruitful, experience-filled life with lots of mistakes that I've learned from and that I carry with me. I told a group of young Republicans yesterday that they were asking about what I thought some of the main criteria for going into politics. And I said, well, the first thing you need to do is go live. You need to go live a life, have some experiences. Don't live your life like you're going to run for political position, because if you two things happen. You typically end up doing nothing with your life. You have a bland life inside this political spectrum, and you bring nothing to the overall picture of government. But typically what happens is you begin to make decisions based on advancing your political position, which is truly detrimental to who we are as a country, who we are as a state. So my advice to anybody out there thinking about getting into politics, do it after you've made some mistakes in your life. Do it after you've experienced life. Don't spend your early adulthood planning on being in politics.
Well, then you see people like Governor Bentley, though, that made them late in life anyway. So you never know what's going to happen.
This is true.
You never know. You never know.
No, but as a rule, Representative Henry, I think that is a very good advice, because if you're actually going to lead people, you need to know how the people live, and you can't do that from an office, in a bubble. You've got to be out there living life parallel to what they're experiencing in order to know how to do anything to help them.
That's right. And so, I think what I offer to the people of Alabama is a real life experience, walking in the shoes that they have walked in. And I can take that and I can fight on their behalf in D.C. I don't know that there's anybody in state politics right now that can say they have truly stood up against the machine and beat it.
Well, we look at your record and we look at what happened with Dr. Robert Bentley. You were one of the most outspoken critics of the governor, and he is gone from Alabama. People are gonna hold you in high regard right there. You ridded Montgomery of the evil that was going on.
Against tremendous pressure from the powers that be to let it go, sweep it under the rug, pretend like it doesn't exist. And that's the same old crap we continue to have in our government. And if it's in Montgomery, I guarantee it's in D.C. I was telling this group, they asked about, draining the swamp. I said, I don't know so much about draining the swamp, but I have found out that if you throw some dynamite in the swamp, the bottom dwellers tend to float belly up. And in Montgomery, that's what we've done. Myself and a few of my colleagues have tossed some dynamite into the swamp, and we've taken out some bottom dwellers.
And you've wrestled some crocodiles also. I think you have some scars to prove it.
Crocodiles, that's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Representative Ed Henry is our guest from Alabama's 9th District. And Representative Henry, a question I have for you here regarding the Senate seat that you would be seeking. It's currently held by Luther Strange. And there is a lot of doubt in Alabama because of his association with Robert Bentley. Whether he's guilty or not, we asked him the questions this morning. Was there a deal made for that Senate seat? And his answer was a very clear no. He can be innocent all day long, but he was associated with Robert Bentley. How do you feel that that's going to help you as a candidate by not having that association going forward?
Well, I told several of the people that were seeking the appointment that the last thing I would want in an election was to be named as Bentley's senator.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately for Strange, that's who he is.
Right.
But beyond that, I doubt very seriously that Luther Strange sat down across the table and made some type of deal with Robert Bentley. The truth of the matter is Robert Bentley was in a position where Luther Strange had something over him, and he knew it. So while nothing had to be said, Bentley knew that Strange had an investigation going on him. And he felt like his only option was to appoint him and get him out of the state and out of Montgomery. That's the truth. And it goes to the point that Luther Strange should never have been involved in the impeachment process, and he certainly should have never been involved in any type of conversation where there might be a quid pro quo situation between himself and the governor. Never. It's just poor judgment at the very least. At the very least, it was poor judgment to fulfill a personal desire of his, which was to be a U.S. Senator.
Our guest is Representative Ed Henry from Alabama's 9th District. Representative Henry, a few moments ago we had U.S. Senator Luther Strange on the program, and we were running out of time. It was in the last 20 to 30 seconds of the interview, and I did ask Senator Strange what he thought about you jumping into the race, and I'm going to play the audio. This is what Senator Luther Strange had to say. Well, Senator Strange, we've only got about a minute and a half left here. I just want to ask you this. There's going to be some other people jumping in the race. Ed Henry's name has been thrown out there today. Do you want to say anything about that?
No, I don't. He said so many things that you wouldn't even want to comment on. They're so crazy. But except to point out that there's a group of people that stood with the Speaker of the House and railed against me personally, attacked me. This was 3 or 4 years ago, just for doing our job. Got to the point where the legislature zeroed out our budget and really tried to eliminate the Office of Attorney General. That's never happened in the history of our state.
Yeah.
And so that shows you the kind of enemies that we made. There's going to be a lot of that. But I think the more the merrier. I've got a record. Like I say, going back to what I first said, I've run. Been running
20 seconds,
for
sir.
5 months.
And then he goes back to his record, and then we wrapped up because we ran out of time. So that's what Luther Strange had to say there. He brought up and said, you've said some crazy things, basically, about him. That's what he said, right?
Right, crazy. Crazy like the governor is incapable of holding office. I don't really know what crazy things I've said, but
I call that common sense. That part. Let's just call it.
Right. I think what he calls crazy is what the people of Alabama call common sense. He's trying to link me to Speaker Mike Hubbard at his time, and look, I was in Auburn the day when we gathered to support him because I believed he was innocent. I think you can go back and look at records. Once I came to the conclusion that he had gotten too close to the line and had possibly stepped over it, I began to ask him to step down and support other people in that position. And it's well documented in the press that he and I did battle publicly. Again, while no one in Montgomery was willing to stand up. Luther is, at the end of the day, a political beast. He is one of the creatures in the swamp. He will never be able to drain it. You know, he was a lobbyist for years before coming back to Alabama and getting into politics here. And at the end of the day, I think as a senator, he's probably, again, just a big lobbyist. So I don't know how he can plan to do anything to straighten out D.C. when he has lived his life as part of the problem. And he's already shown the people of Alabama he would make a bad decision in order to fulfill his own personal agenda. I don't know, and he can call me crazy for that, but I think the people of Alabama see it.
Representative Ed Henry, our guest from Alabama's 9th District. Representative Henry, we appreciate you being on the program.
And
you're welcome. Have we got a couple of seconds? I wanted to throw a timeline for you. We can do it another time.
No, I tell you what, can you hang on the line? We will take a break, and we'll come right back with you.
Sure.
All right, hang with us. Representative Ed Henry, our guest. We're going to take a short break. We will return right after this on Yellowhammer Radio, live from the callks.com Heating and Air Studios. Welcome back at Yellowhammer Radio, Superstation 101 WYDE, live from the callks.com Heating and Air Studios. She is Andrea Tice. I am Scott Chambers, and our special guest is Representative Ed Henry from Alabama's 9th District, going to be seeking that Senate seat currently held by Luther Strange, who was appointed by Robert Bentley. And Representative Henry, as we were headed to break, you wanted to talk about a timeline, right?
Yeah, I just wanted to, something that I know is being put in the wrong light is, look, Luther Strange did not issue the letter to halt the impeachment because he knew somehow that Sessions was going to be appointed.
Okay.
If you talk to the Judiciary Chair, Mike Jones, who met with Attorney General Strange about the impeachment, the last week of October, he will tell you Luther Strange thought the impeachment was going to take place in late May, and they were okay with that because they had an active investigation, and once they found out the impeachment was actually going to take place in December, they were visibly surprised, is his quote.
And that would be the Attorney General's office, right, Representative?
The Attorney General's office
Okay.
was visibly surprised and immediately asked for the impeachment to be paused.
Okay.
Now, the reason for that is because the entire indictments were going to be used in a political manner for Luther Strange to run for governor in 2018, which is what he was gearing up for. And he needed an indictment and a conviction on a sitting governor in order to propel him into that seat. It was the stroke of bad luck for Luther Strange when Trump won and appointed Sessions, because now he was in a predicament where he had issued a letter to pause because he was going to use it in a governor's race, but now he needed to try and get appointed. And so he has been spending the last ever how many months changing his story about what that letter was and what it meant and what he intended. But he's not lying when he says he didn't know at the time he issued it.
Uh-huh.
What he did know is that he was going to indict Bentley and use that as a springboard into the governor's race. It's and it's just semantics, but at the end of the day, if you don't you don't see the whole picture, it's hard to ask the right question, right?
Well, this is true, very true. We're working off of a surface knowledge in a lot of ways, and not knowing what
Right.
went on behind the scenes, and on top of that, you've got people's political motivations. Some are very, like you said, political beasts. That's their goal. Others are less.
Others want to
Right.
serve the people of the state.
Amen.
And Ed
Amen.
Henry,
But-
you are one of those guys. What's your motivation there? Do you want to serve the people of the state, or do you want to be the previously mentioned?
I am here to serve the people of this state, and look, if at the end of the day I'm not the person they want, my wife and kids, we will ride off into the sunset and say thank you for our opportunities to serve. But if they choose to send me to Washington, D.C., they need to know I'm going there to fight. I'm not going there to make friends. I'm not going there to be buddies and be bossed around. I'm going to D.C. to deal with what the corruption that exists up there and the status quo that exists. If we're going to turn this ship around, it's going to take very bold leadership.
Representative Ed Henry, our guest, and for anyone listening to this interview over the past 15, 20 minutes, I'm pretty sure they're clear you're not here to make friends. If they've listened to this interview, I think that's pretty obvious at this point.
And if they're aware of what has happened in the past 2 years in this state, then they're very aware that it's not about friends.
Now, I am going to wrap things up, Representative Henry, with this question, because I did ask Luther Strange the same thing. If you win the special election, you win the primary in August and the special election in December, you're going to have to turn right back around and say, thank you for electing me, and the next day hit the campaign trail again. Are you prepared for this long battle and journey?
Absolutely. I say I'm prepared. I'm prepared today, and I know that God will prepare me tomorrow.
There you go.
So at the end of the day, as long as I'm in His will, I'll be fine.
Lots of sleep, lots of vitamin C, and I think you will make it.
Yeah, that's a good advice. We're so glad you called, Representative Henry. We really wish you the very best.
Thank you, guys. Y'all have a blessed day.
You have a blessed day as well. Come see us in the studio next time. Representative Ed Henry of Alabama's 9th District. Appreciate chatting with him today. Wow. Hour number 2, we're just going to have to disseminate hour number 1.
I know. Oh, my gosh. We just had 2 major interviews back to back.
That was fun. That's
It
what
was.
Yellowhammer Land is all about, nation. At YHN Radio on Twitter, 866-551-9933. We'll take your calls next hour. Jay Holland's got news next.